The dust rose in spirals around the stage-coach wheels as Zelda Richmond stepped down onto the parched ground of Casa Grande, Arizona territory. Her black mourning dress, already collecting the fine desert sand that seemed to coat everything in this God-forsaken place. It was August of 1882, and the heat struck her like a physical blow after the relative shade of the coach interior. But she refused to show weakness. Not here. Not when she had traveled over 1,000 miles from Philadelphia to find out why her brother Samuel had died. The stage driver handed down her trunk with a grunt, eyeing her with the mixture of curiosity and pity that seemed to follow widows and mourning sisters everywhere. She pressed a coin into his weathered palm and turned to survey the town that would be her temporary home. Casa Grande was smaller than she had imagined, a collection of adobe buildings and wooden storefronts that looked ready to collapse under the weight of the relentless sun. The main street was wide and dusty, lined with a general store, a saloon, a hotel that advertised rooms for 50 cents a night, and what appeared to be a telegraph office. Samuel's last letter sat folded in her reticule, the paper worn soft from her constant reading and rereading during the journey west. He had written about opportunities in silver mining, about the beauty of the desert sunsets, about making his fortune before returning east to marry. Then the letters had stopped, and 3 months later, a terse telegram had arrived informing her of his death in a mining accident. The mining company had offered their condolences and a check for $200, as if that could replace the only family she had left. But something about it did not sit right. Samuel had been cautious, almost to a fault. He had written about the dangers of mining, about the safety precautions he insisted upon. For him to die in a careless accident seemed wrong somehow, and Zelda had learned long ago to trust her instincts. She picked up her carpet bag, leaving the trunk for later retrieval, and made her way toward the hotel. The boardwalk creaked under her feet, and she could feel eyes watching her from darkened doorways and windows. A woman traveling alone was unusual enough, but a woman in mourning dress asking questions about a dead man would be even more remarkable. The hotel lobby was marginally cooler than the street, with thick adobe walls that held back some of the heat. An older Mexican woman stood behind the desk, her face kind but wary. "I need a room, please," Zelda said, setting down her bag. "I am not certain how long I will be staying." $2 for the week, paid in advance," the woman replied in accented English. "You are far from home, señorita." "I am looking for information about my brother. He died here 3 months ago, Samuel Richmond." The woman's expression shifted, became carefully neutral. "I am sorry for your loss. There are many accidents in the mines, so I have been told." Zelda counted out the money from her purse. "Perhaps you could direct me to someone who might know more about what happened. The marshal, perhaps, or someone from the mining company." "The mining office is closed now. The marshal you can find at the jail 2 buildings down." The woman handed her a key. "But señorita, sometimes it is better not to ask too many questions. Sometimes the desert keeps its secrets for a reason." It was a warning, delicately delivered but unmistakable. Zelda took the key and her bag and climbed the narrow stairs to her room. It was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the back of the building toward the endless expanse of desert beyond. In the distance, she could see mountains rising like jagged teeth against the pale sky. She removed her hat and splashed water from the pitcher onto her face, feeling the dust cut tracks down her skin. The mirror above the washstand showed her reflection. 23 years old but feeling much older, her dark hair pulled back severely, her gray eyes shadowed with grief and determination. She had inherited her mother's delicate features and her father's stubborn jaw, and right now, That stubbornness was all that was keeping her moving forward. After changing into a slightly less travel-worn dress, still black, but at least freshly pressed before she had left the last station, Zelda made her way back downstairs and out into the brutal afternoon heat. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western horizon, but it would be hours before any real relief came. The jail was easy to find. A squat adobe building with bars on the windows and a faded sign. She pushed open the door and found herself in a small office that smelled of tobacco smoke and old coffee. A man sat behind a desk, his boots propped up, a tin star pinned to his vest. He looked to be in his 50s, with a graying mustache and eyes that had seen too much. Marshall. He swung his feet down and stood, removing his hat. That would be me. Marshall Henry Croft. What can I do for you, miss? My name is Zelda Richmond. I am here about my brother, Samuel Richmond. He died in a mining accident 3 months ago, and I would like to know more about what happened. Croft's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. I am sorry for your loss, Miss Richmond. It was a terrible tragedy, a cave-in at the Silver Queen mine. 3 men died that day. I would like to see the report of the accident. There is not much to tell. The mine was old, the supports gave way. These things happen. He sat back down, clearly hoping to end the conversation. Zelda remained standing. My brother was careful. He wrote to me about the safety concerns he had, about how he always checked the timbers himself before going into a new section. It seems unlikely that he would have been caught unaware. Mining is dangerous work, Miss Richmond. Even the most careful men can be unlucky. I would still like to see the report. Croft sighed and pulled open a drawer, rummaging through papers until he produced a thin file. Here. It is all right there. The mine inspector said it was an accident, plain and simple. The company paid out compensation to the families. There is nothing more to find. Zelda took the file and opened it, scanning the brief report. It was, as he said, almost perfunctory in its brevity. Cave-in, 3 dead, structural failure. But there was something about the sparse details that bothered her. No mention of why the men had been working in that particular section. No details about the condition of the timbers. Nothing about any investigation beyond a cursory inspection. Who was the inspector who wrote this report? Fellow named Dutch Kowalski. He works for the mining company. So the company investigated itself. Croft's jaw tightened. That is how it is done out here, Miss Richmond. The territorial government does not have the resources to send inspectors to every mining accident. The companies police themselves. How convenient for them. Now see here, Croft stood again, his voice hardening. I understand you are grieving, but you cannot come into my town making accusations. The Silver Queen is the biggest employer in Casa Grande. Without it, this town would dry up and blow away. I will not have you stirring up trouble with baseless suspicions. Zelda met his eyes steadily. I am simply trying to understand what happened to my brother, Marshall. Surely you can understand that. What I understand is that you are a woman alone in a rough town, asking questions that nobody wants asked. My advice to you is to accept what happened. Collect whatever belongings your brother left behind and go back east where you belong. This is no place for a lady. I will leave when I am satisfied that I know the truth about Samuel's death. She turned and walked out before he could respond, clutching the thin file to her chest. Her hands were shaking with anger and frustration, but she forced herself to breathe slowly, to think. The marshal was either complicit or cowardly, but either way, he would not help her. She needed to find someone else, someone who might have known Samuel, who might know what really happened at that mine. The sun was lower now, painting the buildings in shades of amber and rust. Zelda walked back toward the hotel, her mind racing. Tomorrow she would go to the Silver Queen mine itself, see if she could speak to any of the miners who had worked with Samuel. Someone had to know something. She was so lost in thought that she nearly collided with a man leading a horse down the street. She stepped back quickly, an apology on her lips, and found herself looking up into a pair of startlingly blue eyes set in a sun-bronzed face. "Pardon me, madam," the man said, touching the brim of his hat. "I did not see you there." He was tall, lean in the way of men who spent their days in hard physical labor, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and a few days' worth of stubble on his jaw. He wore dusty work clothes and chaps, and there was a rifle in the scabbard on his saddle. A cowboy, she thought, probably working one of the ranches that dotted the territory. No, it was my fault. I was not watching where I was going. He studied her for a moment, his gaze taking in her morning dress, the file still clutched in her hands. "You are new in town. I arrived today." She was not sure why she was continuing the conversation, except that his eyes were kind, and kindness was in short supply at the moment. "Well then, welcome to Casa Grande such as it is." He paused, then extended his hand. "Bridger Jameson." She hesitated only a moment before taking his hand. His grip was firm but gentle, his palm calloused from work. "Zelda Richmond." Something flickered in his expression at the name. "Richmond? Any relation to Sam Richmond?" Her heart quickened. "He was my brother. Did you know him?" Bridger's expression grew somber. "I did. We were not close friends, but I knew him to speak to. He would come into town from the mine sometimes, and we would have a drink at the saloon. I was sorry to hear about what happened. He seemed like a good man. He was." Zelda felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back fiercely. "I am here trying to understand what happened to him. The official report is rather sparse." Bridger glanced around the street, then looked back at her. "This is not the best place for this conversation. Have you eaten? The hotel dining room is not bad and we could talk there." She should have been wary of accepting such an invitation from a stranger, but something in his manner put her at ease. And more importantly, he had known Samuel. "That would be very kind of you, Mr. Jameson." "Bridger, please. Mr. makes me sound like my father." He tied his horse to the rail outside the hotel and followed her inside. The dining room was small but surprisingly pleasant, with whitewashed walls and simple wooden tables. They took a seat near the window, and a young Mexican girl brought them water and menus written on a chalkboard. Zelda ordered stew, more out of necessity than desire, and Bridger did the same. When they were alone again, Bridger leaned forward, his voice low. "What did the marshal tell you?" "That it was an accident, pure and simple, and that I should accept it and go home." Bridger nodded slowly. "That sounds like Croft. He is a good man in some ways, but he owes his position to the mining company. They fund most of the law enforcement in this territory, at least in towns like this. He will not want to rock that boat." "You think it was not an accident?" "I do not know," Bridger said carefully. "But I know that Sam was worried about something in the weeks before he died. He mentioned it once when we were talking, said that he had seen something at the mine that troubled him, but he would not say what. I got the sense he was trying to figure out what to do about it." "Did he say anything else?" "Anything at all that might give me a place to start looking." He mentioned another miner, a fellow named Jack Thornton. Said Jack might be able to back him up about whatever it was he had seen. But Jack left town right after the accident, packed up and left in the middle of the night from what I heard. Zelda absorbed this, her mind working. "That seems suspicious." "It does. But it also might mean nothing. Mining is hard work and men come and go all the time. Still, the timing was odd." The girl brought their food, and they ate in thoughtful silence for a few minutes. The stew was better than Zelda had expected, thick with vegetables and meat, seasoned with spices she could not identify, but that warmed her from the inside out. "What do you do, Bridger?" she asked, wanting to understand who this man was who was being so helpful to her. I have a small ranch about 5 miles north of here. Cattle mostly, a few horses. It is not much, but it is mine. There was pride in his voice, the pride of a man who had built something with his own hands. You work it alone. I have a couple of hands who come by when I need them for roundups and such, but mostly it is just me. I inherited the land from my uncle about 6 years ago when I was 20. Been building it up ever since. So he was 26 to her 23. She filed that away, though she was not sure why it mattered. That must be lonely, he shrugged, but she caught a flicker of something in his eyes. A man gets used to his own company, and I come into town often enough to remember why I like the solitude. That surprised a laugh out of her, brief but genuine. It felt strange after so many weeks of grief and worry. Bridger smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look younger. There now. I bet you have not done that in a while. No, she admitted. It has been a difficult few months. I cannot imagine. Sam mentioned you in passing once, said he had a sister back east who was too smart for her own good and twice as stubborn. He said it with affection, though. Zelda felt tears threaten again. That sounds like something he would say. They finished their meal, and Bridger pushed back from the table. Look, I know we just met, and you have no reason to trust me, but if you are serious about looking into what happened to your brother, you are going to need help. This town can be rough on outsiders, especially ones asking inconvenient questions. I would be happy to lend a hand if you need it. Why? She had to ask, had to understand his motives. Why would you help me? You barely knew Samuel. Bridger was quiet for a moment, choosing his words. Because I liked what I knew of him, and because nobody deserves to have their death swept under the rug if there was something wrong. And because you came all this way alone to find answers, and that takes courage. I respect that. It was simply said, and she believed him. There was something fundamentally decent about Bridger Jameson, something that reminded her a little of Samuel himself. Thank you. I would appreciate your help. All right then. What is your plan? I want to go out to the Silver Queen mine tomorrow, see if I can talk to any of the men who worked with Samuel. Bridger frowned. They will not let you just walk onto the property. The company is particular about trespassers, especially now. But I have a friend who works there, fellow named Tom Carter. He might be willing to talk to us if we catch him in town. He usually comes in on Saturday nights, which is tomorrow. That would be a good start. Zelda felt a flutter of hope, the first she had felt since receiving news of Samuel's death. In the meantime, maybe you should go through any belongings of Sam's that you can get your hands on. He might have left some clue about what was bothering him. The marshal has his things, I think. Or perhaps the hotel where he was staying. I can ask around, find out where they ended up. Give me until tomorrow afternoon. They parted in the hotel lobby, and Zelda climbed the stairs to her room feeling less alone than she had in months. It was strange how quickly Bridger had become an ally, but she was grateful for it. She could not do this by herself, and he seemed genuinely interested in helping. That night, she lay in the narrow bed listening to the sounds of the desert night through her open window. Coyotes howled in the distance, and somewhere closer, she could hear men laughing in the saloon down the street. The bed was lumpy, and the room was still warm despite the cooling air outside, but exhaustion pulled her down into sleep anyway. She dreamed of Samuel, of the way he had looked the last time she saw him, full of excitement about his western adventure. In the dream, he was trying to tell her something, but his words were drowned out by the sound of falling rock, and she woke with a start, her heart pounding. The next morning, she washed and dressed carefully, choosing the most practical of her morning dresses. She pinned up her hair and went downstairs to find breakfast. The dining room was busier than it had been the night before, filled with men heading out to work and a few families staying at the hotel. She ate eggs and toast and drank bitter coffee while she planned her day. Bridger arrived mid-morning, leading his horse. He had cleaned up since the day before, his face freshly shaved, though he still wore working clothes. "Morning," he greeted her. "I have news. Sam's things are being stored at the boarding house where he was staying. The landlady, Mrs. Chen, has them boxed up. I told her you would be coming by to collect them." "Thank you." She was touched by his efficiency, by the fact that he had followed through so quickly. "Ready to go," she nodded, and they walked together through the morning cool streets. Casa Grande was more active in the daylight, with wagons rumbling past and people going about their business. She could see the mix of cultures that made up the town. Mexican families who had been here long before the Americans arrived. Chinese laborers who had come to work on the railroads and stayed, rough cowboys and miners and merchants from back east. It was a world entirely different from Philadelphia, rougher and more dangerous, but somehow more honest too. The boarding house was on a side street, a long, low building with a shaded porch. Mrs. Chen was a tiny Chinese woman with iron gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She led them to a small storage room and pointed to a wooden crate. "His things," she said simply. "He was good tenant. Always pay on time, never make trouble. I am sorry he is gone. Thank you for keeping his belongings safe." Zelda knelt beside the crate and lifted the lid. Inside were folded clothes, a few books, a tin box that held personal items. She lifted out the box and opened it. Inside were letters from her, a pocket watch that had belonged to their father, a photograph of their parents, and a leather-bound journal. Her hands trembled as she picked up the journal. This was Samuel's handwriting on the cover, his name written in careful script. She opened it and began to read, aware of Bridger standing quietly behind her, giving her space. The journal was a mix of daily observations, thoughts about the work at the mine, descriptions of the desert landscape that he had found so beautiful. But as she flipped toward the more recent entries, the tone changed. Samuel had started writing about problems at the mine, about ore samples that did not match up, about shipments that seemed larger than the amount of silver being extracted. One entry in particular caught her attention. "Spoke with Jack again today. He has seen the same discrepancies I have. We both agree something is not right, but we need proof before we can go to the authorities. Jack thinks they might be high-grading, skimming silver off the top and selling it privately, but I think it might be something else. The numbers do not add up in any case. Going to try to get a look at the company books if I can." The entry was dated 2 weeks before his death. "Bridger," she said quietly, and he knelt beside her. She showed him the passage. He read it, his expression growing grim. High grading is common enough in mining country, but if he found proof, that would be a serious problem for whoever was doing it. Serious enough to want to keep him quiet. "You think someone killed him?" "I think it is a possibility that needs to be considered." He looked at her, his blue eyes serious. "Zelda, if that is what happened, then you are asking questions that could put you in danger too." "I do not care about the danger. I need to know the truth." "I understand that. Just promise me you will be careful, and that you will not go anywhere alone." "Let me help you with this." She nodded, grateful beyond words. "I promise." They carried the crate back to the hotel, and Zelda spent the rest of the afternoon reading through the journal more carefully, making notes of dates and names that Samuel had mentioned. Bridger sat in the chair by the window, occasionally offering observations but mostly just keeping her company. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples that she was beginning to understand Samuel's letters about, Bridger stood and stretched. Tom should be at the saloon by now if he came into town. Want to go see if we can find him? She hesitated. Ladies did not go into saloons, not even in the rough and tumble West. But she was not here as a lady making social calls. She was here for answers. Yes. The saloon was called the Silver Spur, and it was already crowded with men drinking and playing cards. A piano player pounded out a tune in the corner, and the air was thick with tobacco smoke. Every head turned when Zelda walked in, and the noise level dropped noticeably. Bridger kept a hand at her elbow, guiding her through the crowd. "Tom Carter," he called out. "You here?" A man at the bar turned, a stocky fellow with a miner's build and a weathered face. "Bridger, what in the hell are you doing bringing a lady into this place? Need to talk to you." "It is important." Tom's gaze moved to Zelda, curious and wary. "Who is this?" "Zelda Richmond, Sam Richmond's sister." Understanding dawned in Tom's eyes, followed quickly by concern. He glanced around the saloon, then gestured toward a back table. "Let us talk over there." They settled at the table, somewhat apart from the main crowd. Tom ordered a bottle of whiskey and 3 glasses, though Zelda declined hers. Bridger accepted his but did not drink, just turned the glass between his fingers. "I was sorry about Sam," Tom said without preamble. He was a good man, one of the few at that mine who actually cared about doing the work right. "Thank you," Zelda said. "I am trying to understand what happened to him. I have been reading his journal, and he mentioned some concerns about discrepancies in the mine's production numbers." Tom's expression went carefully blank. "I do not know anything about that." "Tom," Bridger said quietly, "if something wrong was going on and Sam died because he found out about it, then you know that is not right. Not right or not, I have got a wife and 3 children to feed. I cannot afford to lose my job, and I sure as hell cannot afford to end up like Sam." "Did they kill him?" Zelda leaned forward, her voice urgent. "Was it not an accident?" Tom took a long drink of whiskey. "I do not know for sure. But I know that Sam and Jack Thornton were asking a lot of questions, and I know that the section of the mine where they died had been declared unsafe a week before. They should not have been working there at all. But somehow the orders got changed, and they were sent in anyway." "Who changed the orders?" "That I cannot tell you. I just know what I heard. And I know that Jack left town fast after it happened, and nobody has seen him since. That tells me he was scared." Tom looked at Zelda, and his expression was sympathetic but firm. "Miss Richmond, you seem like a nice lady, but you are digging into something dangerous. The Silver Queen is owned by some very powerful people, people with connections all the way up to the territorial government. If they were willing to kill to keep their secrets, they will not hesitate to do it again." "Then help me," Zelda said. "Help me find the proof I need to bring them to justice. I cannot. I am sorry, but I cannot risk my family." Tom stood, leaving his drink half-finished. "My advice to you is the same as I am sure you have already heard. Take your brother's things and go back east. Forget about this. Sam would not want you to die trying to avenge him." He walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Zelda sat back, frustration and anger warring in her chest. "He knows something. He knows more than he is saying." "He is scared," Bridger said. "And he has good reason to be, but he gave us something useful. He confirmed that Sam was killed deliberately, or at least that there are suspicious circumstances around his death. And he gave us a name of who to look for next. Jack Thornton. But he left town. How do we find him? I might have an idea about that." Bridger stood and offered her his hand. "Come on. Let us get you out of here before you cause a riot just by being present." They left the saloon and walked back toward the hotel through the cooling evening air. The stars were beginning to emerge, brighter and more numerous than Zelda had ever seen back east. The desert sky was vast and clear, unpolluted by the smoke and haze of the city. "When Jack left town, he probably did not go far," Bridger said. Men like him, they do not have many options. He was a miner, so he would look for mining work. There are a couple of other operations within a day's ride of here. Smaller outfits, but they are hiring. I could ride out tomorrow, ask around, see if anyone has heard of him. I am coming with you. Zelda, it is a long ride through rough country. I can ride. Samuel taught me when I was a girl, and I am not going to sit in a hotel room while you do all the work. This is my investigation. Bridger studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. All right, but we leave at dawn and you are going to need different clothes. That dress will not hold up on a trail ride. I will manage. Can you shoot? Samuel taught me that too. Our father believed that everyone should know how to handle a firearm safely. Good. Bridger looked satisfied. Meet me at the livery stable at dawn. We will get you a horse and head out. With luck, we can make it to the Copper Ridge mine by afternoon. That night, Zelda went through her trunk and found her most practical dress, a dark gray cotton that would not show dust too badly. She braided her hair and tried to rest, but sleep was elusive. Her mind kept turning over what Tom had said about the dangerous people she was investigating, about Samuel's death being deliberate. Part of her was terrified, but a larger part was grimly determined. Samuel deserved justice, and she would not rest until she had gotten it for him. She met Bridger at the livery as the sky was just beginning to lighten in the east. He had brought a gentle mare for her, already saddled, and a rifle that he insisted she carry. Just in case, he said, though he did not elaborate on what they might need it for. They rode out of Casa Grande as the sun rose, painting the desert in shades of gold and pink. The air was still cool, but Zelda knew it would not last. She settled into the rhythm of the ride, her body remembering skills she had not used in years. Bridger kept the pace moderate, mindful that she was not used to long days in the saddle. The landscape was strange and beautiful, so different from the green hills of Pennsylvania. Tall saguaro cacti stood like sentinels, and the earth was rusty red, dotted with scrub brush and creosote. In the distance, mountains rose in layers of purple and blue. It was harsh and unforgiving, but there was a stark beauty to it that she was beginning to appreciate. They stopped around midday to rest the horses and eat the provisions Bridger had packed: bread, cheese, dried meat, and canteens of water that he warned her to sip sparingly. Water is life out here, he said. Never take it for granted. How did you end up out here? She asked, curious about this man who had so quickly become indispensable to her search. My uncle came out here after the war, looking for a fresh start. He was a Yankee soldier, and going back to Kentucky where he grew up did not appeal to him. Too many old grudges. He made a claim on some land and started ranching, and when my parents died of fever when I was 14, he took me in, raised me like his own son. When he died 6 years ago, he left me everything he had built. I am sorry. It sounds like you lost everyone too. I did. But I have made a life here. It is a good life, even if it is a solitary one. He looked at her, and there was something in his expression that made her pulse quicken. What about you? What is waiting for you back in Philadelphia? Nothing now. My parents have been gone for 5 years. Samuel was all I had left. I was living with a cousin and her family, but I never really belonged there. I was tolerated rather than welcomed. So what will you do when this is over? I do not know. She had not thought that far ahead, had been so focused on reaching Casa Grande and finding answers that she had not considered what came after. I suppose I will go back. I do not have anywhere else to go. You could stay, Bridger said quietly. It is hard country, but there are opportunities here for people willing to work, and not everyone is as corrupt as the Silver Queen management. Are you suggesting I become a cowgirl? She meant it as a joke, but his expression was serious. I am suggesting that sometimes running away to the frontier is not about what you are running from, but what you are running toward. A chance to build something new, to be someone different than who you were before. She thought about that as they rode on, thought about the possibility of a life out here in this strange, beautiful land. It seemed impossible, and yet less impossible than it had just a few days ago. They reached the Copper Ridge mine in mid-afternoon. It was a smaller operation than the Silver Queen, with a handful of buildings clustered around the mine entrance and a small camp where the workers lived. Bridger approached a man who seemed to be in charge, a grizzled fellow with a suspicious squint. "We are looking for a man named Jack Thornton," Bridger said. "We heard he might have found work here." "What do you want with him?" "He was a friend of my brother's," Zelda interjected. "My brother died in a mining accident at the Silver Queen 3 months ago. I just want to talk to Jack to understand what happened." The man studied her for a long moment, then jerked his head toward the camp. "He is here, but he does not talk much about the Silver Queen. Seems like something there spooked him good. 3rd tent on the left." They found Jack Thornton sitting outside his tent, mending a shirt. He was younger than Zelda had expected, probably no more than 30, with red hair and a face full of freckles. When he saw them approaching, he went still, his hand moving toward a knife at his belt. "Easy," Bridger said, holding up his hands. "We are not here to cause trouble. This is Zelda Richmond, Sam Richmond's sister." Jack's face went pale. "You should not be here." "I need to know what happened to my brother. He died. That is all you need to know, please." Zelda moved closer and Jack backed up a step. "I have read his journal. I know he was investigating discrepancies at the mine. I know you were helping him. I just need to understand what he found." "And then what?" "You go to the law. The law in Casa Grande is bought and paid for. You go public with accusations. You will end up dead just like Sam." "So you think he was killed?" Jack looked away, his jaw tight. "I know he was killed. We both were supposed to die in that cave-in, but I got lucky, got called away to help with something else right before it happened." Sam and 2 other fellows were not so lucky. "Who ordered them into that section?" "Tom Carter said it had been declared unsafe." "It was. But somehow the paperwork got changed and Sam's crew was sent in anyway. By the time anyone realized what had happened, the whole section had collapsed." Jack finally looked at her and his eyes were haunted. "I tried to dig them out, we all did, but it was too late. And when I saw that paperwork had been changed, I knew it was not an accident. I knew someone had sent them in there deliberately." "Who? Who changed the orders?" "I do not know for sure. But I know that the mine foreman, a man named Dutch Kowalski, was the one who gave Sam the orders that morning. And I know that Kowalski reports directly to the mine's owner, a man named Silas Vaughn. Vaughn is rich and connected, and he does not like people poking into his business." "What did Sam find? What was he investigating?" Jack hesitated, then seemed to come to a decision. "The Silver Queen is not producing nearly as much silver as Vaughn claims it is. Sam figured out that Vaughn has been inflating the numbers, making investors think the mine is far more profitable than it really is. He has been raising money based on those false numbers, essentially running a fraud scheme. But here is the thing. Sam also found evidence that the mine is being used for something else. He did not tell me all the details, said it was safer if I did not know. But he mentioned something about smuggling, about goods moving through the mine that had nothing to do with silver." Zelda felt her heart racing. This was bigger than she had imagined, more dangerous. "You have any proof? Did Sam give you anything?" "No. He said he was going to compile everything he had and send it to someone in the territorial government he thought he could trust. But he died before he could do it, and anything he had with him would have been buried in that cave-in or taken by Vaughn's men afterward. There has to be something. Some record, some evidence. If there is, it is either at the mine or wherever Sam was keeping his notes. But I do not know where that would be. Jack stood abruptly. Look, I have told you everything I know, which is more than I should have. Now you need to leave and you need to forget about this. Go back east and live your life. Sam would not want you to die trying to avenge him. Everyone keeps saying that, Zelda said with some heat. But no one seems to understand that I cannot just walk away. He was my brother. He was all the family I had. I owe it to him to see this through. Even if it gets you killed, even then. Jack looked at Bridger. You are not going to talk sense into her, are you? I do not think anyone could, Bridger said, and there was a hint of admiration in his voice. But I will do my best to keep her safe. Then you are both fools. But Jack's expression had softened slightly. If you are determined to do this, you need to be smart about it. Vaughn has eyes and ears everywhere in Casa Grande. He will know you are asking questions, if he does not already. And when he decides you are a threat, he will not hesitate to deal with you the same way he dealt with Sam. Then I will have to work fast, Zelda said. They left Jack and rode back toward Casa Grande, the sun sinking low behind them. Zelda's mind was churning with what they had learned. Fraud, smuggling, murder. It was all so much larger than she had imagined. But it also meant that Samuel had died trying to do the right thing, trying to expose corruption and criminality. That gave her some comfort, even as it increased her resolve to finish what he had started. We need to find Sam's notes, she said to Bridger as they rode. He must have hidden them somewhere he thought they would be safe. Did he mention anything in his journal, any place that was special to him? She thought back through the pages she had read. He mentioned a few places. There was a canyon he liked to ride to on his days off, said it was peaceful. And he mentioned the boarding house, but I assume Mrs. Chen would have found anything he left there. Maybe. Or maybe he hid something well enough that she did not find it. It might be worth taking another look. Bridger paused. There is also the possibility that he sent his notes somewhere for safekeeping. A bank, maybe, or the post office. The post office. He could have sent them to himself or held them there to be picked up. Zelda felt a surge of hope. We should check tomorrow. They rode in companionable silence for a while, and Zelda found herself watching Bridger, the easy way he sat his horse, the confident manner in which he navigated the darkening landscape. He had been nothing but helpful and supportive, never questioning her determination or treating her as though she were foolish. It was refreshing after a lifetime of being told what she could and could not do, of being confined by the expectations of society. Why are you really helping me? She asked suddenly, the truth this time. Bridger was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Because I admire your courage, because I think you deserve the truth about what happened to your brother, and because I like you, Zelda Richmond. I have spent a lot of time alone these past 6 years, and somewhere along the way, I forgot what it was like to have someone to care about, someone to fight for. You have reminded me. Her breath caught at the honesty in his words. We barely know each other. True. But sometimes you just know when something feels right. And this, helping you, being with you, it feels right. She did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing, but warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the desert heat. They reached Casa Grande after dark, and Bridger insisted on walking her back to the hotel. At the door, he paused, his hat in his hands. Get some rest. We will start fresh in the morning, check the post office and anywhere else we can think of. Thank you, Bridger, for everything. You do not have to thank me. I want to do this. He hesitated, then reached out and squeezed her hand briefly before stepping back. Good night, Zelda. She watched him walk away, then climbed the stairs to her room, her hand still warm from his touch. The next morning, they met at the post office as soon as it opened. The postmaster was a cheerful man named Henry who was happy to help once Zelda explained who she was. "Oh yes, I remember Sam Richmond. Nice fellow, always polite. Terrible thing what happened." Henry rummaged through his records. "Let me see here. He did send quite a few letters back east, and he received regular mail too, but I do not see anything here about a package being held. What about a letter? A letter to himself or to general delivery?" Henry checked again, then shook his head. "Nothing like that. Sorry, miss." Disappointed but not defeated, Zelda thanked him and left with Bridger. Back to the boarding house then. There must be something we missed. Mrs. Chen let them into Samuel's old room, which had not yet been rented out again. It was sparse and clean, with a narrow bed, a small table, and a trunk for belongings. Zelda searched every inch of the room, feeling along the walls for loose boards, checking under the mattress, even looking behind the single picture that hung on the wall. Nothing. "Wait," Bridger said. He was examining the bed frame, running his hands along the wooden slats. "There is something here." He pulled out his knife and pried at one of the slats. It came away, revealing a hollow space underneath. Inside was a leather pouch, carefully wrapped and tied. Zelda's hands shook as she opened it. Inside were folded papers covered in Samuel's neat handwriting. Dates, numbers, names. There were copies of shipping manifests that did not match production records, notes about conversations Samuel had overheard, and a detailed account of what he had discovered. The Silver Queen mine was producing only about half the silver that owner Silas Vaughn claimed. But Vaughn was also using the mine as a cover for smuggling goods across the Mexican border. Goods that ranged from weapons to contraband liquor to items stolen from other mining operations. He had been inflating his mine's apparent profitability to attract investors, then using their money to fund his smuggling operation, all while skimming profits off both enterprises. "This is enough to hang him," Bridger said quietly, reading over her shoulder. "If we can get this to the right authorities." "Who are the right authorities?" "Marshal Croft is in Vaughn's pocket. Who do we trust?" "The territorial marshal in Tucson, maybe, or the federal marshal. This is big enough that it needs to go higher than the local law." "Then we need to get to Tucson. That is a 2-day ride, and Vaughn is going to know we are looking for this evidence by now. Tom probably told someone about our questions, and people will have seen us riding out yesterday. We will need to be careful." As if to underscore his words, they heard shouting from the street outside. Bridger moved to the window and looked out, then swore under his breath. "We need to go, now." "What is it?" "Men, 4 of them, and they are heading this way. I recognize one of them from the Silver Queen mine." Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, her face tight with worry. "Go out the back, through the kitchen, quickly." They did not argue. Zelda grabbed the leather pouch and followed Bridger through the boarding house, out the back door and into an alley. Behind them, they could hear heavy footsteps and angry voices. "Where do we go?" Zelda asked breathlessly as they ran. "My horse is at the livery. If we can get there, we can ride out to my ranch. It is defensible, and I have weapons there." They moved through the back streets and alleys of Casa Grande, trying to stay out of sight. Bridger kept her close, his hand at her back, guiding her through the maze of buildings. They were almost to the livery when a man stepped out in front of them, a gun in his hand. "That is far enough," he said. He was big and mean-looking, with a scar across his jaw. "Mr. Vaughn wants to talk to you." "We have nothing to say to Vaughn," Bridger said, his voice hard. His hand moved toward his own gun, but the man shook his head. "I would not do that if I were you. I have got friends covering the street. You try anything and the lady gets hurt." Zelda's heart was pounding, but she forced herself to stay calm. They were trapped, outnumbered and outgunned, but they had the evidence, the proof of Vaughn's crimes. As long as they kept that safe, there was still hope. "All right," Bridger said slowly. "We will come with you, but if you hurt her, I will kill you. That is a promise." The man laughed. "You are not in a position to make threats, Cowboy." They were marched at gunpoint through the street toward the Silver Queen mining office, a large building near the edge of town. People watched, but did not intervene. Clearly, Vaughn's reach extended far enough that nobody wanted to get involved. The office was well appointed, with heavy furniture and expensive decorations that seemed out of place in the rough town. Silas Vaughn sat behind a massive desk, a man in his 50s with silver hair and cold eyes. He looked up as they were brought in, his expression one of mild annoyance. "Miss Richmond, I presume," he said, his voice cultured and smooth. "I have heard that you have been asking questions about your late brother." "Samuel was murdered on your orders," Zelda said, her voice steady despite her fear. "I know what you have been doing, the fraud, the smuggling, all of it." Vaughn sighed. "Your brother was a fool. He could not leave well enough alone. I offered him money to keep quiet, a generous amount. But he had this ridiculous notion of honor, of doing the right thing. It is a shame, really. I rather liked him. You had him killed. I had a problem solved." "There is a difference." Vaughn stood and walked around the desk, his hands clasped behind his back. "You understand, of course, that I cannot allow you to leave here with whatever evidence you think you have found. That would be very bad for business." "People know we are here," Bridger said. "They will come looking for us. Perhaps. But by the time they do, you will have had a tragic accident. Mining country is dangerous, after all. Cave-ins, falls, wild animals. So many ways for things to go wrong." Vaughn nodded to his men. "Search them. Find whatever they are carrying." Rough hands grabbed Zelda, and she clutched the leather pouch to her chest, but it was no use. One of the men ripped it from her grasp and handed it to Vaughn. He opened it, glanced at the papers inside, and smiled. "Your brother was very thorough. It is almost a shame to destroy this." He walked to the fireplace and dropped the pouch into the flames. "No." Zelda lunged forward, but the man with the scarred jaw grabbed her, holding her back as Samuel's carefully compiled evidence burned. Bridger fought too, managing to land a solid punch before he was overwhelmed and forced to his knees. Blood dripped from his split lip, but his eyes were blazing with fury. Vaughn watched the papers burn to ash, then turned back to them. "Now then, I think a ride into the desert is in order. My men will escort you. I am told that the sun and lack of water can do terrible things to people. You will simply disappear, and in a few weeks, if your bodies are ever found, everyone will assume you got lost. These things happen to outsiders who do not know the country." "You will not get away with this," Zelda said, trying to inject confidence she did not feel into her voice. "Jack Thornton knows everything. He will talk. Jack Thornton is a coward who ran away. His word against mine. I do not think that will be a problem." Vaughn waved a hand dismissively. "Take them, and make sure there are no mistakes this time." They were dragged out of the office and thrown onto horses, their hands tied. 4 of Vaughn's men surrounded them, guns drawn. They rode out of town, heading south into the deepest part of the desert. Zelda tried to think, to find some way out of this, but her mind kept coming back to the image of Samuel's evidence burning, all his work destroyed. They had been so close, and now they were going to die, just like he had. Beside her, Bridger caught her eye. His hands were working at his bonds, trying to loosen them. He was not giving up, and neither would she. They rode for what felt like hours, deeper into the wilderness. The sun climbed higher, beating down mercilessly. The men did not give them water, did not speak except to grunt orders at each other. They were heading toward a canyon, Zelda realized, a place where bodies might never be found. As they reached the canyon entrance, Bridger made his move. His hands came free of the ropes, and he threw himself from his horse, crashing into one of the guards. They went down in a tangle, Bridger fighting for the man's gun. The other guards shouted, their horses rearing in confusion. Zelda kicked her horse hard, sending it bolting forward. One of the men grabbed for her reins, but she leaned low over the horse's neck, feeling a bullet whine past her ear. Behind her, she heard gunshots, shouting, the thunder of hooves. She did not dare look back, just urged the horse faster, racing into the canyon. She had to find help, had to get to someone who could stop Vaughn. The canyon walls rose around her, red rock stained with centuries of wind and rain. Her horse stumbled on the rocky ground, nearly throwing her, but she managed to stay on. Her hands were still tied, making it difficult to control the animal, but she gripped hard with her knees, the way Samuel had taught her. She heard riders behind her and risked a glance back. 2 of Vaughn's men were in pursuit, and there was no sign of Bridger. Her heart clenched with fear for him, but she could not stop. She had to survive, had to get the word out about what Vaughn had done. The canyon narrowed ahead, and Zelda guided her horse into a side passage, a tight space between towering walls of rock. The men followed, and she could hear them gaining. She emerged into a small box canyon, a dead end, and her heart sank. She wheeled the horse around, looking for another way out, but there was none. The 2 men entered the canyon behind her, spreading out to block the only exit. They dismounted, walking toward her with guns drawn. "End of the line, lady," one of them said. "Should have stayed back east where you belong." "What did you do to Bridger?" she demanded, trying to buy time though she had no idea what good it would do. "Your cowboy friend. He is probably dead by now. Jed does not like it when people fight back." Zelda felt tears sting her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. If she was going to die, she would die on her feet, defiant to the end. The men were almost to her when a shot rang out, echoing off the canyon walls. One of the men dropped, clutching his shoulder. The other spun around, and another shot took him in the leg, sending him sprawling. Bridger rode into the canyon, his rifle smoking. His face was battered and bloody, but he was alive. Relief flooded through Zelda so powerfully that she nearly fell from her horse. He dismounted and quickly disarmed the 2 wounded men, tying them with their own ropes. Then he came to Zelda and cut her bonds, his hands gentle despite the urgency of the situation. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his eyes searching her face. "No, but I thought they had killed you. Takes more than that to kill me." He managed a smile, though it looked painful with his split lip. "We need to go. The other 2 men are dead, but more might come." "Where do we go? We cannot go back to Casa Grande. Vaughn will have men everywhere." "We head north to my ranch. We can regroup there, figure out our next move." They rode hard, leaving the canyon behind. The sun was past its zenith now, beginning its long slide toward evening. Zelda's body ached from the hard riding and the fear, but she did not complain. They were alive, and as long as they were alive, they had a chance. Bridger's ranch appeared in the distance as the sun touched the horizon, a small cluster of buildings nestled against a rise in the land. There was a house, a barn, corrals for the horses and cattle. It was modest but well-maintained, the home of a man who took pride in what he had built. They stabled the horses and went inside. The house was simple, just a few rooms, but it was clean and comfortable. Bridger lit a lamp and then set about securing the doors and windows. "We should be safe here for tonight," he said, "but we cannot stay long. Vaughn will figure out we did not die in the desert and he will come looking." Zelda sank into a chair, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "The evidence is gone. Everything Samuel compiled, it is all ash now. Without it, how do we prove what Vaughn has been doing? Jack Thornton knows. He can testify to what Sam found. But Vaughn was right. It is Jack's word against his, and Vaughn has money and influence. Jack is just a miner who ran away. She put her head in her hands, feeling defeat wash over her. We have lost. No. Bridger knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. We have not lost. We are alive and we know the truth. That is something. And there has to be another way to get evidence against Vaughn. If Sam found it once, we can find it again. How? We cannot get into the mine office. Vaughn will have it guarded now. Then we go over his head. We ride to Tucson, talk to the federal marshal. Tell him what we know, what we have seen. Even without the papers, we have our testimony and we have Jack's. That has to count for something. Zelda looked up at him, this man who had risked his life for her, who refused to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. Why do you believe in this so much? You could have walked away at any point. Because it is the right thing to do, and because I believe in you. His hands tightened on hers. Zelda, I know this is not the time or place, and I know we have only known each other a handful of days, but I need you to know that I have never met anyone like you. You are brave and determined and smart, and somewhere along the way, I have fallen in love with you. Her breath caught. Bridger, you do not have to say anything. I just needed you to know. Because if we are going up against Vaughn again, if we are putting our lives on the line, I want to do it knowing that I told you the truth. I feel it too, she whispered. I did not expect it, and I do not entirely understand it, but I feel it. You have become so important to me so quickly, and I cannot imagine doing this without you. He leaned forward and kissed her, gentle and careful because of his split lip. It was a promise and a declaration all at once, and when he pulled back, his eyes were shining. Then we do this together. We ride to Tucson, we tell the marshal everything, and we do not stop until Vaughn pays for what he did to Sam and to how many others. She nodded, feeling renewed determination. Together. They ate a simple meal of beans and cornbread, then Bridger insisted she take the bed while he kept watch. We will leave at first light, he said. It is a 2-day ride to Tucson, maybe less if we push hard. We will need to avoid the main roads, stay off the beaten path. Vaughn will have men looking for us. Zelda lay down on the narrow bed, still dressed, and tried to rest. Her body was exhausted, but her mind would not quiet. She kept thinking about Samuel, about how close they had come to avenging him, only to have the evidence destroyed. But Bridger was right. They could not give up. They owed it to Samuel to see this through. Sometime in the night, she finally drifted off, and when she woke, pale dawn light was filtering through the window. Bridger was moving quietly around the room, packing supplies into saddlebags. He looked tired but determined. "Ready?" he asked when he saw she was awake. "Ready." They rode out as the sun rose, heading northeast toward Tucson. Bridger kept them off the main trail, using his knowledge of the country to navigate cross-country. It was harder going, but safer. They saw no signs of pursuit, but both of them remained vigilant, knowing that Vaughn would not give up easily. They stopped briefly at midday to rest the horses and eat, then pushed on. The landscape changed as they traveled, becoming less desert and more grassland, with scattered trees and rolling hills. It was still hot, but not as brutally so. As the sun was setting on the first day, they made camp in a sheltered spot near a creek. Bridger built a small fire and made coffee while Zelda tended to the horses. There was something peaceful about the routine, about working together in companionable silence. After they ate, they sat by the fire, and Bridger told her more about his life on the ranch, about the plans he had for expanding his herd, for building a better house. "It is a good life," he said. "Hard but satisfying. Everything you have built with your own hands. There is honor in that." "It sounds wonderful," Zelda said honestly. "I have spent my whole life in cities, living by other people's rules, fitting into other people's expectations. The idea of building something of my own, of being free to make my own choices, it is appealing. You could do it. You are strong enough, smart enough, and you would not be alone. He looked at her across the fire, his expression serious. I meant what I said last night, Zelda. I love you. And when this is over, when Vaughn is dealt with, I want you to stay. I want you to build a life with me. Her heart swelled. It is too soon. We barely know each other. I know enough. I know that you are brave and loyal and that you never give up. I know that when I am with you, I feel like I am exactly where I am supposed to be, and I know that I do not want to let you go. What if I am not suited for this life? What if I cannot adapt to the West? Then we will figure it out together, or we will go somewhere else. I do not care where I am as long as you are with me. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but they were happy tears for the first time in so long. I want that too. I want a life with you. I want to stay. He came around the fire and pulled her into his arms, and they held each other as the stars came out overhead, bright and infinite in the desert sky. They started early the next morning, both eager to reach Tucson. The town came into view in the late afternoon, larger than Casa Grande, with more permanent buildings and a sense of civilization. Bridger led them straight to the marshal's office, a sturdy building near the center of town. The federal marshal was a man named Thomas Reid, in his 40s with sharp eyes and an air of competence. He listened as they told their story, asked pointed questions, and took careful notes. When they were finished, he sat back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "This is serious," he said. "If what you are saying is true, Silas Vaughn has been committing multiple federal crimes. But you understand that without physical evidence, it will be difficult to build a case against him. He has money and influence, and he will hire the best lawyers." "We know that," Bridger said. "But there has to be something we can do. He murdered 3 men and tried to murder 2 more. He cannot be allowed to get away with it." "I agree. Let me make some inquiries. I know some people in the territorial government who have been suspicious of Vaughn's operation for a while now. With your testimony and that of Jack Thornton, we might have enough to at least open an official investigation. And if we can get into that mine office, seize his records before he has a chance to destroy them, we might be able to prove everything." "He will run if he knows you are coming," Zelda warned. "Then we will not give him the chance. I will put together a team and we will ride out tonight. With luck, we can be there by tomorrow evening and execute a warrant before he knows what is happening." Reid stood. "You two should stay here where it is safe. You have done your part." "No," Zelda said firmly. "I am coming. I need to see this through." Reid looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression made him reconsider. "All right, but you stay back when we go in. I will not have civilians getting in the way if there is trouble." "Agreed." They spent the night in a hotel in Tucson, and for the first time in days, Zelda felt safe enough to truly rest. She and Bridger had separate rooms, propriety still dictating some things even on the frontier. But before she went to her room, he kissed her good night, a promise of the future they would build together once this was over. Marshal Reid assembled a team of 6 men, all deputies or experienced lawmen. They rode out the next morning, heavily armed and determined. The ride back to Casa Grande felt both longer and shorter than the journey away, time stretching and compressing under the weight of anticipation. They reached the town after dark, riding in quietly. Reid sent 2 men to find and secure Jack Thornton to make sure he was safe and could testify. The rest of them converged on the Silver Queen office. The building was dark, but not empty. Guards stood at the doors, men Zelda recognized from Vaughn's crew. Reid announced their presence, showing his warrant, and demanded entry. The guards hesitated, and for a moment Zelda thought there might be a fight. But Reed was calm and authoritative, and in the face of federal authority, the guards backed down. They found Vaughn inside, burning papers in the fireplace. He looked up as they entered, his expression shifting from surprise to fury. "You have no right to be here," he said coldly. "I have every right." Reed showed him the warrant. "Silas Vaughn, you are under arrest for fraud, smuggling, and murder. You can come quietly, or we can do this the hard way." For a moment, Vaughn looked like he might fight. His hand moved toward a desk drawer, but Bridger was faster, stepping forward and slamming the drawer shut. "I would not do that if I were you." Vaughn looked around the room, seeing the armed men, understanding that he had no way out. His shoulders slumped in defeat. "I want a lawyer." "You will get one, in Tucson, where you will stand trial." Reed nodded to his deputies, who moved forward to place Vaughn in irons. They searched the office, seizing all the papers they could find. Much had been burned, but not everything. There were ledgers, shipping records, correspondence with other criminals. It was enough, Reed said, combined with testimony from Zelda, Bridger, and Jack, to build a solid case. In the days that followed, the full extent of Vaughn's crimes came to light. He had been defrauding investors for years, using the mine as a front for an extensive smuggling operation. Several other men in Casa Grande and beyond were implicated, including the mine foreman Dutch Kowalski and even Marshall Croft, who resigned in disgrace rather than face charges. Samuel's name was cleared, his death officially recognized as murder rather than accident. The territorial government issued a formal apology to Zelda, and a more substantial compensation than the pittance the mining company had originally offered. Through it all, Bridger stayed by her side. He helped her settle Samuel's affairs, arrange for a proper burial with a headstone that told the truth about how he had died. A man of honor who had died trying to do the right thing. Vaughn's trial was held in Tucson 6 weeks after his arrest. Zelda testified, as did Bridger and Jack Thornton. The evidence was overwhelming. Vaughn was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 20 years in the territorial prison. When it was over, when justice had finally been served, Zelda and Bridger stood outside the courthouse in the bright Arizona sunshine. She felt lighter than she had in months, as though a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "It is over," she said wonderingly. "It is really over." "It is." Bridger took her hand. "Now we can start living our lives." "I need to send a telegram to my cousin in Philadelphia. Let her know I will not be coming back. And after that, I want you to take me home, to our home." He smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. "I like the sound of that, our home." They were married a month later in a small church in Casa Grande. The town had changed in the wake of Vaughn's arrest, becoming cleaner and more honest. A new marshal had been appointed, and the Silver Queen mine had been taken over by a legitimate operation that treated its workers fairly. Jack Thornton came to the wedding, as did Tom Carter and Mrs. Chen and many others who had known Samuel, and respected what Zelda had done to honor his memory. It was a simple ceremony, but heartfelt, and when Bridger slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, Zelda felt complete in a way she never had before. They moved to the ranch, and Zelda threw herself into learning the rhythms of frontier life. She learned to manage cattle, to mend fences, to shoot accurately and ride for hours without tiring. It was hard work, harder than anything she had done in her pampered Philadelphia existence, but it was hers. She was building something real, something that mattered. Bridger proved to be everything she had hoped and more: a loving husband, a patient teacher, a true partner in every sense of the word. He never treated her as less than equal, never dismissed her opinions or ideas. Together, they made the ranch prosper, expanding the herd and improving the land. 2 years after their marriage, Zelda gave birth to their first child, a boy they named Samuel after her brother. He had his father's blue eyes and his mother's determination, and from the moment he drew his first breath, Zelda knew that she had finally found the family she had been searching for. More children followed, a daughter named Clara, then another son they called James. The ranch house grew to accommodate their expanding family, rooms added on as needed, always with laughter echoing through the halls. Zelda never forgot what had brought her to Arizona, the quest for answers about her brother's death. She made sure her children knew the story of Uncle Samuel, of his courage and his integrity. And she taught them to always stand up for what was right, no matter the cost. On quiet evenings, she and Bridger would sit on the porch, watching the sun set over the desert landscape, their children playing in the yard. She would think about that first day in Casa Grande, how lost and alone she had felt, seeking answers about Samuel's death. She had found those answers, but she had found so much more. She had found love, purpose, and a home. She had found a life that was entirely her own, built on her own terms. And she had found in Bridger Jameson the answer to every question she had not even known she was asking. Who would stand by her through anything? Who would love her for exactly who she was? Who would help her build a life worth living? The lonely cowboy who had become so much more than she ever could have imagined. As the years passed, their love only deepened. They weathered droughts and hard winters, celebrated good harvests and the birth of grandchildren. Bridger's hair turned silver, and lines appeared around Zelda's eyes, but when they looked at each other, they still saw the young people who had met on a dusty street in Casa Grande, brought together by tragedy but bound by something far stronger. Sometimes, on the anniversary of Samuel's death, Zelda would ride out to his grave, bringing flowers and sitting for a while in the quiet. She would tell him about her life, about his nieces and nephews who bore his name and his legacy. And she would thank him, for even in death, he had led her to exactly where she needed to be. The ranch continued to grow and prosper, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. When Arizona became a state in 1912, the Jameson Ranch was recognized as one of the pioneering families that had helped build the new state. Their children and grandchildren would carry on the legacy, generations of Jamesons working the land and living by the values of integrity and hard work that Zelda and Bridger had instilled. But through it all, the heart of the ranch was the love between two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances. Zelda had arrived seeking answers about her brother's death, and in Bridger, she had found the answer to questions she had not even known she needed to ask. He had become her partner, her love, her home. They grew old together on that ranch, surrounded by the family they had built and the land they had tended. And when their time came, many years later, they were laid to rest side by side in the small cemetery on a hill overlooking their land, with Samuel's grave nearby. Three people who had each played a crucial role in the story of justice, love, and the building of a life in the American West. The story of Zelda Richmond and Bridger Jameson became part of the local folklore, passed down through generations. The woman who came seeking justice for her murdered brother and stayed to build an empire. The lonely cowboy who helped her find answers and found love in return. Their ranch still stands, now run by their great-great-grandchildren, a testament to what two people can build when they refuse to give up, when they stand up for what is right, and when they open their hearts to love even in the darkest of times. In the end, Zelda had come to Casa Grande seeking answers about death, but had instead found everything about life: purpose, justice, family, and a love that would last beyond their lifetimes, echoing through the generations in the land they had built together and the legacy they had left behind. The lonely cowboy had indeed become the answer to every question she had. And together, they had written a story that would be told for 100 years. A story of courage, love, and the indomitable human spirit that had conquered the American frontier.